All right, welcome back. We continue to pay tribute to Fela Kuti by inviting the host of SAFM's The African Connection, Richard Nwamba, and with him is the founder and the CEO of African Perspective Publishing, Rose Francis. Now, as we continue the conversation, we can all agree that Fela Kuti was a tortured soul. What do you think attributed that to? And we all know that he had 27 wives, that he all married one day.
Yes.
Yes, but he was tortured. But one has to ask who tortured him.
Yeah.
You know, it was the military government at the time, and the police. You know, because he was an activist and he really spoke against corruption.
Yeah. The one thing also that we need to realize about Fela, he was like you and I. He had flaws. He wasn't a perfect human. He was very promiscuous. The fact that he married all those 27 women in 1978 in one go, because the Nigerian authorities used to harass them. And so he wanted to give them legal status, that these are my wives. So you can't harass them because these are my wives. Because some of them were called prostitutes and so on and so on. So he married all 27, literally to protect them. But the point is, the fact that he died of AIDS, that tells you that he was, like I said, he was a flawed human like all of us. Some people may call him an anachronist because some of his views on women were outdated. In 2017, he wouldn't dare say some of the things that he was saying about women. So he was. But what fascinates me about him is the fact that, as flawed as he was a genius. A lot of people I've got into conversation with other scholars.
But there was an honest side of him, an honest and generous side of him as well.
Yes, definitely. Oh, definitely. I mean, like I said, the fact that he put his lot with the masses as opposed to, living a life of ease. He could have just ignored all the suffering, as Rose Francis was saying. He could have simply ignored that and said, I come from a well-to-do family, I've got my money. But no, he chose to suffer with the masses. Not only to articulate their aspirations, but to represent them. And the beatings that he undertook, I mean, at one stage in 1977, he was beaten up and the mother was thrown out of the window. And eventually she died from those wounds. She died later on, exactly 13 April 1978. And guess what he did? Instead of being discouraged, his next album was called Coffin for Head of State. So the coffin was actually taken to Dodon Barracks. Dodon Barracks, that's where General Olusegun Obasanjo, the man who eventually became the president of Nigeria from 1999 to 2007, and he was then the military leader in Nigeria. So the more they tried to discourage him, and then at one stage he was deported from Accra as he was performing the song Zombie. Zombie talking about soldiers, that soldiers are unthinking, that whenever you tell them to go and die, they go and die. Go and shoot it, they go and shoot. Go and whatever it is. So they got so offended that as he was performing on stage, he was bundled out and deported from Ghana.
And clearly he never allowed the system to break him. So what does that tell you as what kind of person Fela was?
I think he died as a result of the system breaking him, together with AIDS, definitely. But one has to be frank and honest. He died as a result of that. Constant abuse in and out of
So the system eventually broke him?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right.
I think another thing to add about him is that, there's this term, disestablishmentarianist. When he went to America in 1969, and he met this woman called Sandra Isidore, which is covered in this book, This Picture of a Life, this biography, she literally made him know himself, because as somebody who went to London to study jazz, he wanted to impress Americans at their own game. And she said to him, where you come from in Nigeria, don't they have music? I said, yeah, they do. So why don't you play original music? So when he went back in 1970, when he went back to Nigeria, he was determined that he was going to now play the kind of music that was going to represent his country. And that's when we started to have a band now called Nigeria 70. And then he started playing Afrobeat with the help of Tony Allen, as I said. But the fact that she exposed him to the writings of Malcolm X, Eldridge Cleaver, and Kwame Nkrumah, suddenly he realized that he had a role to play. He wasn't just a musician. He needed to play a far bigger role than just be an entertainer.
And why are we still talking about him 20 years after his death?
Well,
why is his music still relevant today?
His music is still relevant. He, as a person, is still relevant because we are living in Africa, but Africans don't really rule Africa. They might be in the front as presidents, but are they really ruling Africa? So that's his message. Really. That's his underlying message.
Pertinent question.
Yeah.
Rose and Richard, unfortunately, we have to end it there.
Yes, definitely.
Time is not fair. It's certainly not fair. But then thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you.
Right, indeed. Pleasure. Now, helping us to pay tribute to producer, arranger, musician, political radical, outlaw Fela Kuti is the host of SAFM's The African Connection, Richard Nwamba, and with him is the founder and the CEO of African Perspective Publishing, Rose Francis. Kuti died in August exactly 20 years ago. Morning Live takes a break right back.
And the second election all in Nigeria. And the second election, like you was a pass. Papa nonsense.